Welcome to part 2. My daughter needs that window seat move. A white woman stood in the aisle, her sharp gaze fixed on the young black student occupying the seat. A heavy silence spread around them. A few passengers looked over. Some turned away as if they hadn't seen a thing. No one could have guessed that in a matter of minutes, the entire situation would flip upside down. And the only person who would leave feeling humiliated wouldn't be that young student. This is what sparked the events of what's happening right now. Let's continue where we left off. Zuri took a moment to compose herself. A middle-aged man in a burgundy tie called her over. Terrence Green, another judge, introduced himself. He'd read her test score and said it was truly impressive. She tried to focus on Terrence's positivity and forget about Rebecca, though she kept one eye on her across the room. The hour passed in a swirl of conversations. Zuri managed to speak with two more donors, leaving each discussion with a promise that they'd keep an eye on her progress. She gleaned some interesting details about possible scholarships if she advanced to the finals. Finally, the small crowd began thinning. Zuri thanked Dr. Watson for inviting her and stepped into the corridor, feeling the tension drip off her shoulders. She texted Jason, "Zuri, meet and greet's over." "Where are you?" "Jason, I'm downstairs in the public lounge, next to the giant statue of a horse. You can't miss it." Zuri headed for the escalators. The giant horse turned out to be a stylized bronze sculpture near the main entrance. Jason stood there wearing a casual jacket, phone in hand. He waved when he saw her stepping forward. "How'd it go?" he asked, eyes searching her face. Zuri shrugged. "It was okay, I guess. Talked to some nice people, but Rebecca was there." Jason's expression hardened. And she definitely wanted me to know she's not pleased to see me. She hasn't forgotten the plane incident." Jason exhaled. "Her personal bias shouldn't affect the official scoring, especially for tomorrow's objective tests, right?" "Yes, tomorrow is mostly objective," Zuri acknowledged. "But the final day includes debates, interviews, that sort of thing. Judges have more discretion. I'm worried." They started walking toward the exit, where a wide glass door revealed the Denver evening lights. Jason led her to a quieter corner near a row of vending machines so they could talk in peace. "Look," he said softly, "I won't lie, prejudice is real. And if she's determined to sabotage you, that's messed up, but you have other judges. Terrence Green, Dr. Watson, these are decent folks from what I've heard. If you perform outstandingly, it'll be hard for her to twist the outcome." Zuri nodded, but anxiety lingered. "You're right. I just have to do my absolute best, make sure no one can question it." Jason patted her shoulder. "Exactly. And if something fishy happens, you speak up. People like Terrence or Dr. Watson might step in. You're not alone." The words comforted her more than she expected. She realized that she'd inadvertently made an ally in Jason, someone who understood the system's pitfalls but believed in her abilities. "Thanks," she said, a warm flush in her cheeks. They parted ways soon after. Zuri returned to her hotel, heading straight for her desk to immerse herself in a rigorous review of tomorrow's subjects. She tackled math first, breezing through practice problems. Then she switched to science, focusing on any weaker areas. For history, she spent extra time building a timeline of major events in her notebook, color-coding them so she'd remember chronological order. Outside, the Denver night turned silent. Inside, Zuri's lamp glowed until well past midnight. Morning came with a burst of sunlight through the thin hotel curtains. Zuri's alarm rang at 6 a.m. She groaned, blinking bleary eyes. She managed maybe 5 hours of sleep, but her mind was already racing. Throwing on a pair of black jeans and a neatly pressed white shirt, she grabbed a quick breakfast, toast and scrambled eggs again, and hurried to the convention hall. Day two's test was scheduled for 9 a.m., but Zuri wanted to arrive early, find her seat, and calm her nerves. Sure enough, a cluster of the 40 qualifiers was already milling around near the entrance to exam hall. Some pored over flashcards, others paced with frowns of concentration. Zuri located her assigned desk in the front row. The exam structure was laid out in a thick packet: 20 math questions, 20 science, 20 history. Each set had both multiple choice and short answer components, meaning she'd have to actually write out solutions, not just bubble in. She felt a tingle of anticipation in her fingertips. This was the moment of truth. No ambiguous personal bias here, just straightforward scoring. At 9 sharp, the proctor gave the signal. Zuri opened to the math section. The first problem was a geometry puzzle involving circles inscribed in triangles. She methodically drew a diagram on scratch paper, labeling angles. Time ticked quietly. After finishing the geometry question, she cruised through a polynomial root problem, then paused at a combinatorics question involving arrangements of letters. The complexity was high: 8 letters with repeated characters. She scribbled furiously, then realized she might be overcomplicating. Focus, Zuri. Breathe. She scaled back, used a simpler formula, got an integer answer that felt right. Next was science, a swirl of biology, chemistry, and physics. She felt comfortable in the physics questions. Momentum and energy were second nature. Chemistry was manageable, though the stoichiometry question took an extra minute. Biology demanded recall of cellular respiration steps, but she'd studied that last night. The final portion, history. Immediately, Zuri felt the old dread. The first question was about the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. She recognized it as the treaty that ended the Mexican-American War in 1848. She wrote a concise short answer response, relieved. But the next question was trickier, analyzing the significance of the diet of worms during the Protestant Reformation. Zuri racked her brain. Martin Luther, 1521, condemnation by the Holy Roman Emperor. Yes, that's it, she told herself, scribbling details about how it shaped religious authority and the eventual spread of Protestant movements. A few more tough ones: the exact year of certain Supreme Court cases, the name of a lesser-known African revolutionary. She carefully answered them all, though a few she wasn't 100% certain about. The proctor announced, 15 minutes remaining. Zuri scanned back to ensure she'd answered everything. She corrected a math notation error and clarified a final science statement. Then she set down her pencil. When time was called, relief coursed through her. I did the best I could. After filing out, she learned results would be posted by late afternoon, narrowing the field to 10 finalists. This round was the critical gate. Only the best 10 would proceed to day 3. Zuri stepped into the hallway, knees wobbling a bit from adrenaline. She considered calling her mother again, but decided to hold off until she had actual news. She also felt a pang of hunger, barely touched her breakfast after all. Spotting a sign for a cafe on the second floor, she headed that way. She was halfway up the stairs when a voice behind her called out, "Zuri." Turning, she saw Erica Chen, a fellow competitor from Florida. Zuri knew Erica only by name and ranking. She was rumored to be top in advanced mathematics. Erica jogged up, panting lightly. "Hey," Erica said. "Congrats on making it this far. I saw you scored 7th on day 1. I was 9th." Zuri nodded, offering a small smile. "Likewise, how do you feel about the test today?" Erica shrugged. "Math was fine. Science, not bad. History might have been my downfall. I was iffy on a question about Haitian independence." She laughed ruefully. "I prefer numbers." Zuri found herself liking Erica's easy candor. "Same here, history is my Achilles heel, but hopefully we did enough." They walked to the cafe, decided to share a table. Over coffee and pastries, Erica told Zuri about her drive to become an astrophysicist. Zuri explained her passion for blending math with social policy. They bonded over the weight of expectations. Erica's parents had sacrificed a lot for her education, just like Zuri's mother. Yet under their friendly conversation, an unspoken tension remained. They both wanted to be in that final 10, and there were only 10 slots. Still, it was a relief for Zuri to talk with another competitor who wasn't consumed by cutthroat energy. They parted with mutual good wishes. Zuri realized something important. Not everyone here was an adversary. Many were just kids like her, fighting for a dream. With hours to kill before the posted results, Zuri decided to wander the convention booths again. She ended up near a panel discussion in a large side room, overhearing speakers talk about equitable funding for public schools. Curiosity piqued. She slipped in and found a seat at the back. On stage, 3 panelists discussed how property taxes influenced local school budgets and how states might level the playing field. Zuri scribbled mental notes. This was exactly the kind of real-world application of policy she cared about. Halfway through, a door at the side of the room opened, and a figure slipped in quietly. Zuri recognized the tailored blazer and coiffed hair of none other than Rebecca Willard. She took a seat in the front row, listening with an aloof posture. Zuri felt a jolt of anxiety. Can I catch a break from her? She tried focusing on the panel, but her gaze kept drifting to the back of Rebecca's head. What is her role in all this? When the panel ended, applause echoed. As the crowd rose, Zuri got up too. She hoped to slip out unseen, but Rebecca turned at that exact moment, scanning the room. Their eyes met across the rows of chairs. Rebecca's mouth tightened in a thin line. She gave a curt nod, then proceeded to talk to one of the panelists. Zuri hurried out, heart pounding. By 4 p.m., the crowd once again filled the main lobby, waiting for the scoreboard. Zuri spotted Erica standing near a pillar, arms folded, eyes locked on the blank screen. A slow trickle of tension spread like an invisible wave. Suddenly, the screen flickered. A staffer at the mic said, "And here we have our 10 finalists." 10 names appeared, each with a rank. Zuri scanned the list, heart hammering so loudly she could hardly see straight. Then she found it. De La Cruz, Annika Chen, Erica Taylor, Brian James, Zuri. She stared. 6th place. She made it. A gasp of relief burst from her lungs. I'm in the final 10. Around her, cheers and groans mingled. Some students congratulated the winners, others stood silent with forced smiles. Zuri noticed Erica pumping her fist. She was 2nd. Their eyes met and Erica mouthed, "Yes." Zuri grinned back. The staffer resumed speaking. "Congratulations to our finalists. Please gather in room A3 for the final orientation at 5 p.m. tomorrow. You will present your culminating projects or debates. After that, the top 3 will be chosen." Zuri felt her phone vibrate. She answered, hearing her mother's excited voice. "I saw online. 6th place, baby. We're all so proud." Zuri thanked her, voice trembling with happy tears. As she hung up, she felt a presence behind her. She turned, and there was Terrence Green, the kindly judge she'd briefly spoken with last night. He gave a friendly wave. "Zuri, right," he said. "Congratulations. We've been impressed with your consistency. Keep it up tomorrow." Zuri's chest warmed. "Thank you, Mr. Green." He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "Tomorrow's final round can be nerve-wracking. Just remember, we're looking for insight, poise, and your ability to connect ideas. Don't let yourself get flustered." Zuri nodded, determined. Terrence offered a fatherly smile before moving on to talk with another finalist. But as she stood there, basking in the glory, her eyes flicked across the room. She noticed Rebecca near the scoreboard, reading the list with a composed expression. Then Rebecca locked eyes with Zuri. She didn't scowl or say anything. Instead, she turned briskly and walked away, coat swishing behind her. There was no overt confrontation, but the message was clear. "I see you advanced, and I'm not happy." Zuri inhaled sharply. Tomorrow's final test, the one with subjective judging, was going to be a battlefield. I can't let her overshadow my chance. I'll face her if I have to. At 5 p.m., Zuri joined the other 9 finalists in room A3. The official explained the next step. Each finalist would draw a random topic for a short presentation or debate. They'd have one night to prepare their arguments, then present to the judges tomorrow morning. Zuri's name came second in the random draw. She approached a table with small sealed envelopes. She selected one, peeled it open. The slip of paper inside read, "Should national education standards override local control to ensure equal opportunities?" Her pulse skipped. A policy debate question, my sweet spot. She felt a surge of relief. This was something she'd thought about often. On the other hand, it was also a polarizing topic, open to interpretation. She'd need to be sharp. One by one, the other finalists drew their topics. Erica got something about environmental science in schools. Another competitor, Brian, drew a question about the role of technology in modern classrooms. Zuri quickly jotted down ideas. Federal guidelines versus states' rights, the tension of uniform standards versus local autonomy, the potential for bridging resource gaps. She had a swirl of arguments in her mind. That evening, she left the orientation, mind buzzing with research angles. She was about to dive headlong into the biggest night of her life, one last preparation session before tomorrow. "Stay calm, Zuri. You've got this." Yet a small part of her worried. This final day was where a hostile judge like Rebecca could exploit any perceived weakness. "I'll just have to be so compelling that nobody can deny it." Zuri returned to her hotel room, changed into sweatpants and a hoodie, and wasted no time diving into the topic. She set up her laptop on the small desk, connecting to the hotel's Wi-Fi. For nearly 3 hours, she researched existing federal education standards, like the Common Core, and arguments for and against them. She rummaged through data on how local control affected schools in wealthy versus impoverished districts. Her notes piled up quickly, so she organized them into bullet points. Pro-federal standards. Ensures consistency across districts. Helps close the achievement gap in underfunded areas. Provide accountability measures. Confederal standards. Local communities know their unique needs better. Overreach can stifle innovation. Risk of one-size-fits-all approach, ignoring cultural differences. Hybrid proposals. A balanced system. Mandated minimum standards with room for local adaptation. Federal funding matched to local compliance. She also reminded herself to connect these points to real stories or data so it wouldn't sound too abstract. At the same time, she needed to watch out for potential traps, especially if certain judges took a strong ideological stance on local versus federal powers. By midnight, she drafted an outline for her 10-minute presentation. She planned an opening anecdote about a small school district that benefited from federal grants, followed by stats on inequality, then a balanced conclusion. She rubbed her tired eyes, stared at the blinking cursor. I need to make it compelling, something that stands out. Remembering Jason's earlier suggestion about personal stories, she decided to weave in her own experience. How her public school initially had under-resourced math classes, but once the district aligned with a higher standard, they received grants for better textbooks and extracurriculars. That was how she discovered advanced math in the first place. A yawn cracked her jaw. She peered at her phone. 1:15 a.m. was blinking on the screen. She had to be up by 6:30. Quickly, she typed an email to Ms. Calloway with her draft arguments, not really expecting a response at such a late hour. She just felt the need to share. Finally, she printed out her notes on the hotel's lobby printer and crawled into bed. She was so tired, sleep enveloped her almost instantly. At 8 a.m., the 10 finalists gathered in a large meeting hall subdivided into smaller rooms. Each had an assigned time slot to present or debate their chosen topic. Zuri's slot was at 9:30, second in line. She clutched her neatly typed bullet points and tried not to let her heart thunder too loudly. A volunteer usher called, "First presenter, Brian Taylor." Brian, a tall boy with glasses, stepped forward and vanished behind the door. Zuri and the others waited in a lounge-like area where chairs and a table with water bottles were provided. The tension was palpable. 10 minutes later, Brian emerged, looking slightly shaky but smiling. "The judges were nice," he told the group, "but they asked a lot of questions." Zuri's nerves shot up. "I can handle questions. I studied everything," she reassured herself. When her name was called, she stood, smoothing out an invisible wrinkle in her black slacks. She clutched her notes with damp fingers. A staff member led her to a smaller, closed-off room arranged like a miniature conference hall. 10 or so seats for the panel of judges in front, a lectern in the center for the presenter. She recognized Terrence Green near the center, Dr. Watson at the far end, a couple more academic figures she'd seen in passing. And near the middle, impeccably poised, was Rebecca Willard. Zuri's breath caught. She forced a polite smile as the staffer introduced her. Finalist number 6, Zuri James, topic: Should national education standards override local control to ensure equal opportunities? She stepped up to the lectern, carefully arranging her note cards. Her voice trembled for half a second as she began, but she remembered Ms. Calloway's advice. Speak like you believe it. Good morning, judges. I appreciate the opportunity to address a question that I believe is central to the future of education. She started with a brief anecdote about her hometown's underfunded district, how adopting higher common standards attracted resources. She saw Terrence's head nod as she described the improvement in advanced classes. However, she also acknowledged the opposing viewpoint, explaining how local communities might resent federal mandates that don't consider local cultures or special needs. She carefully cited a statistic from the National Education Policy Center, emphasizing that a flexible approach often yields the best outcomes. Throughout, she tried to maintain eye contact across the panel. Most judges seemed engaged, occasionally jotting notes. Rebecca, however, had a cold, almost unreadable expression. She made no effort to nod or smile. Zuri wrapped up with a concluding statement. In my view, the solution isn't an all-or-nothing proposition. It's about recognizing that every child deserves a baseline of quality education while still respecting local innovation. We need strong national standards that serve as a springboard rather than a cage. Thank you. The judges clapped politely. Then came the cue, and a stern-looking judge in rimless glasses asked, "How would you handle states that refuse to adopt federal standards due to political or ideological reasons?" Zuri answered that federal funding could be tied to meeting certain benchmarks, but stressed nuance in enforcement. Another judge asked about potential bureaucracy stifling teacher creativity. Zuri offered examples of hybrid models. Finally, Rebecca spoke up. Her voice held a steely edge. "Miss James, you've painted a rather optimistic picture. But what if the local authorities genuinely oppose these standards? Should the federal government override them by force? What if that leads to massive pushback? Wouldn't that hamper education more than help it?" Zuri inhaled slowly. This was a fair question, but the way Rebecca said it felt like a challenge, daring her to slip up. She responded calmly, "There's always a risk of pushback. However, if the federal guidelines are accompanied by transparent communication and incentives, such as grants for curriculum development, most communities will see the tangible benefits. Overriding by force isn't the goal, collaboration is. In rare cases where states still refuse, the question becomes whether the children in those states should be left behind because of political disagreements. Rebecca's eyes narrowed for a fraction of a second, but she said nothing more. Another judge asked a mild follow-up question which Zuri answered. Then Terrence said, "Thank you, Miss James, that was thorough and well-structured." Zuri exhaled. She stepped away from the lectern, heart pounding, and left the room as the next finalist was called. Outside, she felt a wave of exhaustion, but Erica was there waiting her turn. "How'd it go?" Erica whispered. "I think it went okay," Zuri answered, noticing her own trembling hands. "They asked tough questions." Erica nodded, offering a supportive smile. "I'm sure you did great." Zuri found a quiet hallway to sit, gulping water from a fountain. She replayed the Q&A in her head, wondering if she'd said anything that might have left her vulnerable to sabotage by Rebecca's biased scoring. But she had to let it go now. She'd done her best. The final presentations continued through the morning. Around noon, all 10 finalists were done. Everyone was told to reconvene at 3 p.m. in the main auditorium for the awards ceremony, where the top 3 would be announced. Zuri decided to step outside for fresh air. The crisp Denver breeze calmed her. She texted Jason, "Zuri, just finished my final. I think it went well." Jason, "Knew it. Keep me posted. I'll swing by the awards if you want a cheerleader." She smiled, her chest warming. She typed, "Zuri, that'd be great." 3 p.m. main auditorium. A part of her wanted to run to her hotel and hide under blankets until 3 p.m., but she forced herself to remain present. She found a quiet corner in the building's mezzanine, sat down with her binder, and tried to distract herself by scribbling random notes. The minutes dragged painfully. At 2, 45, Zuri joined a flood of attendees streaming into the main auditorium. It was a grand space with rows of seats and a stage flanked by large screens. A sense of anticipation buzzed in the air. Parents, sponsors, teachers, and judges took their places. The 10 finalists were ushered to reserved seats in the front row. Zuri saw Jason slip in, scanning the crowd, eventually finding a seat near the back. He waved, giving her a thumbs up. She mouthed thank you and turned to face the stage. A hush fell as a middle-aged man in a crisp black suit stepped to the podium. The program identified him as David Ingram, the chief coordinator. Welcome, everyone, to the final event of the National Scholastic Achievers Conference, he began in a smooth baritone. We commend all the students who participated, and especially these 10 finalists. Thunderous applause. Zuri felt her cheeks warm as she joined the other 9 in standing for a moment of recognition. After careful evaluation of today's presentations, David Ingram continued, our panel of judges has reached their decision on the top 3 winners. It was not an easy choice given the caliber of talent. Zuri's heart hammered. She glanced at Erica, who was pale but trying to smile. On the far side of the stage, she spotted the row of judges, including Terrence Green, Dr. Watson, and unavoidably Rebecca Willard. Rebecca's face was unreadable. David Ingram cleared his throat, reaching for a small envelope. In third place, the tension in the room was electric. Brian Taylor, cheers exploded. Brian, the tall boy, covered his mouth, looking shocked. He stood and moved to the stage, receiving a medal and a handshake. David Ingram resumed. In second place, Erica Chen. Erica let out a little squeal, then dashed up to accept her medal. Zuri clapped, truly happy for Erica, but her own nerves soared. Either I'm first or I'm not in the top 3 at all. The coordinator took a breath. And finally, the first place winner of this year's National Scholastic Achievers Conference is. Zuri held her breath, each second feeling impossibly long. A swirl of hope and dread filled her chest. Then the words rang out. Zuri James. Time seemed to slow. For a heartbeat, she couldn't believe what she'd heard. Then the auditorium erupted in applause and shouts. Warm relief flooded through her. She stumbled to her feet, tears springing to her eyes. Everything around her felt surreal. She climbed the steps, blinking under the bright stage lights. David Ingram placed a gold medal around her neck, then handed her a small trophy. Cameras flashed, capturing her wide-eyed expression. Terrence Green led the clapping among the judges, a proud smile on his face. Dr. Watson beamed. Yet Zuri's gaze flitted to Rebecca. She saw a tightness in the woman's jaw, though Rebecca managed a polite, forced clap. The corners of her mouth curved into a smile that never reached her eyes. Still, Zuri had done it. She bested the entire field. The negativity from that single judge hadn't been enough to overshadow her performance. She felt light, almost dizzy with joy. Following the awarding, a wave of people surged onto the stage for photos. Erica gave Zuri a quick hug. You deserve it, she whispered happily. Brian clapped Zuri on the shoulder, grinning. Great job, your presentation was so thorough. Zuri thanked them both, her mind swirling. She tried to remain coherent in front of the cameras. She saw Terrence Green step forward, giving her an enthusiastic handshake. Wonderful work, Zuri. We're all proud. Before she could respond, a small group of reporters approached with notepads. Miss James, can we ask a few questions about your background and future plans? She stammered a yes, feeling overwhelmed. As they asked about her preparation process, her ambitions, and her inspirations, she managed to answer politely, though her heart hammered. She attributed success to her mother's support, her teacher Ms. Calloway's mentorship, and her own determination to excel despite challenges. One reporter asked, "Do you feel that the competition was fair? Did you sense any favoritism or obstacles?" Zuri paused. The memory of Rebecca's hostility flickered in her mind. But here she was, standing with the winner's trophy. "I think the judges worked hard to be thorough," Zuri said diplomatically. "I'm grateful for the outcome." From the corner of her eye she caught a glimpse of Rebecca, who was already stepping off the stage, her face dark. Once the official ceremony concluded, the crowd began dispersing. Jason hurried up to the stage edge, waving. Zuri hopped down, carrying her trophy. He engulfed her in a brief hug, stepping back with a grin. "First place, I'm so proud of you," he said. "You overcame everything, even that woman's negativity." Zuri laughed, tears still brimming. "It feels unreal." But just then she spotted Rebecca standing near the side exit. The tension in the woman's posture was unmistakable. She was speaking in hushed tones with a tall man in a dark suit, the two of them glancing in Zuri's direction. Zuri felt a chill. She still looked so angry. Jason followed her line of sight. "Think she'll try something now that you've won?" Zuri shook her head, uncertain. "I hope not. The final decision is made, the competition's over." They decided to head back to the corridor, where Zuri could collect her bag from the coat check area. As they walked, Zuri suddenly realized the tall man in the dark suit was following them, stepping out from the side exit, trailing behind at a moderate distance. Anxiety flared. She cast a quick glance over her shoulder. The man's face was impassive, but he seemed to be keeping them in view. Jason noticed it too, tensing. When they turned a corner toward the coat check, the man lengthened his stride. "Miss James," he said, voice low. Zuri froze, clutching her trophy. Jason stood protectively at her side. "Yes." The man extended a business card, voice neutral. "I'm Mr. Inman, Ms. Willard's associate. She wishes to speak with you privately." Zuri's mouth went dry. "Speak with me? About what?" Mr. Inman merely repeated. "She's waiting near the west exit. She wants a few words before you leave." Alarm bells rang in Zuri's head, but curiosity warred with caution. Jason whispered, "You don't owe her anything." But a part of Zuri needed closure. She nodded slowly. "I'll go. Jason, come with me." Mr. Inman frowned but didn't protest. He led them through a quieter hall that was mostly empty of conference attendees now. They reached a side exit, a heavy glass door opening onto a small courtyard. There, arms folded, stood Rebecca Willard in the late afternoon sunlight. Zuri stepped forward, trophy in hand. "You wanted to talk to me." Rebecca's gaze flicked to Jason with a hint of annoyance. "I meant privately." Zuri set her jaw. "He's staying. If you have something to say, you can say it." A muscle in Rebecca's cheek twitched, but she nodded. She drew in a breath, then said, "Congratulations on your victory. Clearly the other judges were charmed by your performance." Zuri bristled. "I earned it. It had nothing to do with charm." Rebecca pursed her lips. "Perhaps you genuinely impressed them. But let me be clear, not everyone is so easily convinced. The real world is a lot tougher than a classroom debate." Jason stepped in. "What exactly do you want? It's over. She won fairly." Rebecca's cold stare landed on him, then returned to Zuri. "I just want to remind you that a single competition doesn't grant you immunity. I have seen many bright stars fade under real pressures, at universities, in professional environments." Zuri clenched the trophy. Her voice trembled, half from anger, half from adrenaline. "If you're trying to intimidate me, it's not working, and I'm not going to stand here and be threatened." Rebecca raised a hand. "Threats? No, simply pointing out that your success today doesn't guarantee success tomorrow." Zuri exhaled sharply, mind flashing back to the moment on the plane. "Some people never change." "Ms. Willard," she said, "I'm proud of what I've achieved. If you can't be happy for me, that's your choice. But I'm not backing down from who I am or what I deserve." For a moment, Rebecca's eyes burned with something like contempt. Then she turned, stepping toward the door leading back inside. "Just don't expect the world to cater to you," she murmured. With that, she disappeared into the hallway, Mr. Inman following. Zuri stood there, heart pounding in her ears. "Well," Jason said after a pause, "she's every bit the Karen you described." Despite the tension, Zuri let out a breathy laugh, tears stinging her eyes. "I guess she needed to get the last word, but I'm done letting her define me." Jason squeezed her shoulder. "Good, the best revenge is your success." Zuri nodded. She gazed at the shining trophy in her hands, feeling a swirl of triumph and relief. "She can't take this away from me. I won fairly, and everyone saw it." That evening, Zuri collapsed on her hotel bed, the trophy set carefully on the nightstand. She reread a dozen congratulatory texts. Her mother, Ms. Calloway, even classmates from her hometown who had watched the live stream online. Everyone was ecstatic. A flood of new emails appeared in her inbox, some from smaller colleges. But one caught her eye immediately. Elmbridge University, Admissions Department. Her pulse raced as she clicked it open. Subject: Invitation to join Elmbridge's Future Scholars Program. Dear Zuri James, we followed your performance at the NSAC and were highly impressed by your critical thinking, poise, and academic excellence. We would like to invite you for an exclusive interview to discuss your potential admission, along with a full scholarship, into our Future Scholars Program. We believe you embody the qualities Elmbridge seeks in the next generation of leaders. Congratulations on your accomplishment. We look forward to speaking with you. Best regards, Dr. Irene Walters, Director of Admissions, Elmbridge University. Zuri let out a squeal. Tears threatened as she realized this was the door to her dream. She read the email twice more, hardly believing it. A full scholarship interview. Could it really be happening? She quickly typed a polite reply, expressing gratitude and confirming her willingness to schedule the interview. Once sent, she flopped back on the bed, letting out a whoop of joy into the pillow. A ping indicated another email arriving, Westbrook University also expressing interest. She realized that by winning this competition, she'd vaulted into a spotlight. Perhaps multiple schools wanted her. She texted Jason, who replied almost instantly, "That's amazing. Elmbridge interview, you're unstoppable." A grin tugged at Zuri's lips. She typed back, "Thanks for believing in me. Let's meet tomorrow before I fly home." He agreed, and a sense of calm settled over her. She had come so far, overcoming not just the rigors of the tests, but also the hostility of someone who tried to belittle her from day one. Later that night, a small celebratory banquet was held for the finalists and their families at a nearby ballroom. Tables were decorated with silver centerpieces, and music played softly in the background. Zuri attended alone. Her mother couldn't leave work to travel again, but she felt warm pride imagining her mother's face. Erica waved her over to a table. Brian was there too. They shared stories, laughing about comedic test errors from the last few days. Many finalists were relieved it was over, even if they hadn't won. This event felt like a moment of closure. After dinner, a short awards slideshow played, showing pictures from the competition. Zuri's triumphant moment took center stage in one photo, her beaming face. She blushed at the applause. She glanced around, half expecting to see Rebecca, but if the judge was present, she wasn't making herself visible. Good, Zuri thought. She wanted to enjoy this moment in peace. As the banquet concluded, Zuri gathered her things to return to the hotel. By chance, she bumped into Dr. Helena Watson, the academic advisor who had first invited her to the meet and greet. Zuri. Again, congratulations. And I heard the rumor Elmbridge has already reached out. Zuri nodded, excitement creeping into her voice. I got their email this afternoon. Dr. Watson clapped her hands in delight. Wonderful. Let me give you some advice, if I may. Elmbridge is my alma mater. During your interview, highlight your unique vision, how you want to apply mathematics to social equity. They eat that up. Also, if you need references, Terence Green and I would be happy to write letters. Zuri's eyes widened. That's so generous, thank you. Not at all. Students like you deserve every opportunity. Dr. Watson's eyes sparkled. I'm tired of seeing potential wasted because of old prejudices. At the word prejudices, Zuri felt a pang thinking of Rebecca. She swallowed. I appreciate that more than you know. Dr. Watson patted her shoulder. Enjoy your night, dear. The future's bright for you. With that, Zuri parted ways, feeling buoyed. She was no longer just some random high school kid. She had allies in high places, people who saw her potential and wanted to nurture it. The next day dawned with a clear Denver sky. Zuri's flight home was in the late afternoon, so she packed up her hotel room and checked out around 10 a.m. The trophy, carefully wrapped in clothing, took up precious luggage space, but she wasn't about to leave it behind. She texted Jason, who arranged to meet her at a coffee shop near the convention center. Redwood Brew had an inviting wooden exterior, big windows, and the aroma of roasted beans inside. Zuri entered, scanning the small tables until she spotted Jason at a corner seat, reading from his tablet. Hey, she greeted, sliding into the chair opposite him. He smiled widely. Champion Zuri, how's it feel to be unstoppable? She shook her head, laughing. I'm not unstoppable, trust me. I'm just relieved. Feels like I can finally breathe. They chatted about how the final day had wrapped up. Jason confessed that he'd found her presentation the best by far, though he admitted partial bias. Zuri teased him about being her personal cheerleader. So, he said, leaning forward, what's next? I assume you'll finish senior year back home, but after that, Elmbridge is basically rolling out the red carpet. Zuri sipped her latte. I have an interview with them soon. If that goes well, maybe I'll start in the fall. A full scholarship would mean everything to me and my mom. He nodded. Well, if you need any help with interview prep or connecting with policy folks, let me know. I have some contacts that might be useful. Thank you, she said, sincerity warming her voice. I still can't believe how this all played out. I remember stepping onto that plane feeling nervous, and then that woman, Rebecca, Jason nodded gravely. You took a stand, though. Proud of you for that. Zuri released a long breath. I guess I learned that sometimes you can't just bow to other people's demands, especially if it means losing your rightful place. After they finished their drinks, Jason insisted on walking Zuri to the train station where she'd catch a ride to the airport. On the way, they passed the tall buildings of downtown Denver, sunlight glinting off the glass facades. Zuri's mind wandered to the path ahead. Graduation. a summer job to help with family finances, then hopefully college in the fall. When they reached the station, Jason paused. I'll probably see you around, maybe at future conferences, but stay in touch no matter what. She gave him a tight hug. Of course, thank you for everything, he grinned. Next time you'll be the keynote speaker or something, telling others how you overcame adversity. Zuri smiled at the idea, though it felt surreal. We'll see. Take care, Jason. She waved goodbye, heading through the station's turnstiles toward the airport train. A sense of finality hung in the air, but also a fresh beginning. By 3 p.m., she stood at the security line in Denver International, luggage in tow. Her phone buzzed again with a message from Ms. Calloway. Ms. Calloway, can't wait to see you back at school. The entire math club is throwing a mini celebration. Also, you're basically a celebrity here now. Zuri chuckled. Me, a celebrity. She typed a quick response, promising to bring the trophy by for a show and tell. She boarded her flight home, ignoring a faint twinge of fear that maybe she'd encounter more seat drama. This time, the passenger next to her was an elderly woman who smiled kindly and barely spoke beyond a polite greeting. Zuri was grateful for the peace. As the plane soared into the sky, she rested her head against the window, watching the clouds roll by. Her mind drifted back to the start of this journey, the moment she stepped onto that first flight in Houston, only to have that tension-laden exchange about a seat. It felt like ages ago. In the end, she didn't just stand up for her seat on the plane. She'd stood up for her seat in life. The seat she rightfully earned through hard work, talent, and unwavering determination. And no matter how many people like Rebecca Willard tried to take it away, she'd proven she wasn't backing down. Her phone dinged again. She checked it, finding a note from Dr. Walters at Elmbridge confirming a phone call next week to discuss scholarship details. Zuri's stomach fluttered with excitement. This is real. She closed her eyes, the hum of the airplane lullabying her. She pictured the campus of Elmbridge, imagined stepping into lecture halls with bright minds, forging paths in policy and math. She saw herself continuing to speak out for educational equity, maybe one day becoming a leading voice. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, announcing the approximate arrival time in Houston. Zuri opened her eyes, feeling an inexplicable mix of calm and anticipation. I'm on my way, world. Watch out. The plane touched down in Houston under a blazing late afternoon sun. Zuri navigated through the familiar airport corridors, luggage wheels clicking on the tile floors. As she emerged into the arrivals hall, her heart gave a leap at the sight of her mother, Alana James, standing anxiously near the doors, still in her scrubs from an early hospital shift. "Mom," Zuri called, raising a hand. Alana rushed over, arms open wide. Zuri dropped her suitcase handle just in time to be pulled into a tight hug. "Baby, I'm so proud of you," her mother murmured, voice trembling. Zuri hugged back fiercely. "Thank you, Mom, I've missed you." They parted, tears glistening in Alana's eyes. She took a good look at Zuri as if searching her face for the changes. "Look at you, first-place champion, and I heard from Ms. Calloway you got an email from Elmbridge." Zuri nodded, heart skipping. "They want to interview me for a full scholarship. It's unreal." Alana pressed her hands together in thanks or prayer. "I always knew you were special, but I never imagined this. Let's go home. I need all the details." They grabbed an Uber, heading to their small apartment on the city's north side. Zuri recounted every highlight of the competition: day one's test, Day two's subject challenge, the final debate, and that nerve-wracking ceremony. She carefully omitted the more intense personal drama with Rebecca, not wanting to overshadow the triumph. She figured her mother had worried enough. At home, she lugged her suitcase inside. The living room was tidy. Alana had evidently done a thorough cleaning in anticipation. On the coffee table, a small vase of flowers awaited, with a handmade sign reading "Welcome Home, Zuri," in bright marker. Zuri's eyes misted as she set the trophy next to it. "Mom, you did all this." Alana smiled softly, smoothing her scrubs. "Just wanted you to feel how proud I am." They ordered takeout, Zuri's favorite dumplings and noodles from a nearby Asian restaurant, and spent the evening reminiscing. Alana asked 100 questions about the other contestants, the hotels, the city, and the final presentation. Zuri answered between bites, her voice animated as she told comedic anecdotes about Erica and Brian. Finally, around 9 p.m., Alana had to rest for an early shift the next morning. She kissed Zuri's forehead and said, "We'll talk more tomorrow. By the way, Ms. Calloway wants you to drop by school soon. She said she can't wait to show you off to the younger students." Zuri laughed, though a wave of warmth filled her. "I will. Good night, Mom." Once alone in her room, Zuri unpacked enough to find a place on her desk for the trophy. She stared at it for a long moment, running her fingers over the engraved letters. First place NSAC. So many memories compressed into that little piece of metal. She checked her phone for the millionth time that day, smiling at the incoming messages. A group chat from some of the finalists was full of well wishes. Erica had posted a picture of them hugging after the announcement. Brian had typed a congratulatory note. Terrence Green had even emailed a short letter praising her performance. With a weary but contented sigh, Zuri set her phone aside and crawled into bed. Sleep claimed her quickly, this time, free from the burden of immediate deadlines. The next afternoon, Zuri made her way to her high school to meet Ms. Calloway. It was a short bus ride, the same route she'd taken for years. But stepping onto campus after winning a national competition felt surreal. Students in the hallway recognized her word had spread. Some waved, shouted "Congrats, Zuri." A few asked if they could see the trophy. She carried it in her backpack, carefully wrapped. Miss Calloway's classroom door was open, revealing the math teacher at her desk, grading papers. She looked up at the sound of footsteps. "Zuri!" she exclaimed, standing so fast her chair nearly toppled. Zuri grinned, crossing the room in a few steps. They hugged warmly. Miss Calloway pulled back, eyes shining. "You've made us all so proud, and Elmbridge's interest is the cherry on top." Zuri set the trophy on the desk. Miss Calloway admired it, turning it so the gold plating caught the fluorescent light. "Your classmates are itching to celebrate. I told the math club we'd have a little party after school. Will you stay?" "Of course," Zuri said, heart warming at the idea. Sure enough, by 3 p.m., the small math club classroom was full of posters, hand-drawn "Congrats" signs taped to the walls, plus cupcakes on a table. A handful of underclassmen shyly asked how Zuri stayed so motivated. She shared about the competition, recommended strategies, and told them not to let fear hold them back. The atmosphere was joyful. Ms. Calloway gave a little speech about how Zuri's perseverance was a model for others. Zuri felt her cheeks burn with pride and humility. "A year ago, I was just another student hopping to catch a scholarship. Now, they're calling me an inspiration." That evening, Zuri sat at her bedroom desk, sorting through college brochures. The email from Elmbridge insisted they speak by phone in a few days to formalize the scholarship interview. Another email from Westbrook also invited her to an online Q&A session. She gazed at the picture of Elmbridge's ivy-covered buildings on her screen. It felt within reach now, not just a fantasy. She pictured herself walking those halls, diving into advanced math courses, forging a path in educational policy. Her phone chimed. A text from Jason. Jason, how does it feel being back home as a star? Any parades in your honor? She snorted with laughter, typing back. No parades, just cupcakes. But yes, feels nice. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a line. I see big things for you. Don't forget me when you're famous. Zuri placed her phone aside, a soft smile on her lips. She remembered that fateful flight, the moment a stranger had demanded she give up her window seat, launching a confrontation that showcased prejudice and entitlement. Who would have guessed that from such a negative spark, she'd find the fire of self-belief and resilience? The memory of Rebecca Willard's final words flickered through her mind. The world won't cater to you. She exhaled. She didn't want the world to cater to her. She wanted to earn her place in seats and spaces that were rightfully hers, by merit, hard work, and an unbreakable spirit. Zuri opened a fresh document on her laptop, typing a heading at the top, Elmbridge Scholarship Interview Prep. Below that, she wrote, Introduce personal experience with underfunded schools. Highlight synergy between math and social policy. Demonstrate leadership and collaboration potential. She paused, adding a final bullet. Never let anyone decide your seat but you. And with that, she began the next chapter of her journey, one where no voice of prejudice could ever drown out her conviction, and no hostile glare could make her give up the seat she had rightfully claimed. Sometimes, a single stand we take, like refusing to move from a reserved seat, can ripple into life-changing consequences. Zuri's story reminds us that prejudice may lurk anywhere, but resilience, talent, and strong allies can conquer it. And no matter how many Karens cross our path, we can find a way to keep our rightful seat, in a plane, in a competition, or in our own future. If you faced a moment like Zuri's, would you stand up or step aside? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories.